The grain silo door creaked open, and I stared at what my Uncle Robert Turner had hidden inside. Stacks of cash, bundled and wrapped in plastic, filled nearly half the circular space. But that wasn't what made my hands shake. It was the letter taped to the wall, written in his familiar handwriting. "I'm sorry I never came for you, Nathan. This was always meant to be yours." 6 months earlier, I was counting down the days until I aged out of the foster system. 19 years old, bouncing between homes since I was 7, and about to be completely on my own. The group home in Chicago smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. My caseworker, Carol Ramos, had that look she always got when she delivered bad news, but this time was different. She handed me an envelope with my name written in careful script. Inside was a letter from a lawyer named Aaron Edwards in some small town called Millfield, 3 hours south. "Your Uncle Robert Turner has passed away and left you his farm property. Please contact our office to discuss the inheritance. Uncle Robert." I barely remembered him, a tall man with calloused hands who visited once when I was 8, bringing me a toy tractor and promising he'd come back soon. He never did. After my parents died in that car accident, he was the only family member who even acknowledged I existed, but somehow I still ended up in the system. Carol watched me read the letter twice. "You have family, Nathan, real family who thought about you. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you're watching from and hype this video in the comments. This story gets wild, and I want to hear from everyone who's ever felt forgotten by the people who were supposed to care." The bus ride to Millfield gave me 3 hours to imagine what I'd find. Maybe a small house with a garden. Maybe some land I could sell to get started in life. I definitely didn't expect to inherit a working farm, complete with grain, silos, and equipment I didn't know how to use. Aaron Edwards met me at his office on Main Street. He was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He spread papers across his desk and explained that Robert had owned 200 acres of prime farmland, a farmhouse built in 1923, and several outbuildings, including 2 grain silos. "But there's a problem, Nathan." Aaron's expression grew serious. "The property has significant debt. Your uncle took out loans against the land to keep the farm running during some bad years. If you can't make the payments, the bank will foreclose within 6 months." The numbers he showed me were staggering. $40,000 in back payments, plus ongoing monthly obligations. I had $300 to my name and no idea how to farm. Why would he leave me something that's basically worthless? I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. Aaron leaned forward. "Your uncle came to see me about 6 months before he died. He was sick, knew his time was limited. He said you were the only family he had left, and he'd made mistakes he couldn't fix. He wanted to give you a chance he never gave himself." The farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel driveway, surrounded by fields that stretched to the horizon. It was bigger than I'd imagined, with a wraparound porch and windows that caught the afternoon light. The paint was peeling and some shutters hung crooked, but it had good bones. Robert's truck was still parked beside the house, keys hanging from the ignition. Inside the house, everything was neat and clean, like he'd prepared for someone to find it this way. There were photos on the mantle, including one of me as a kid that I didn't remember being taken. The first night I sat on the porch and tried to process everything. The silence was overwhelming after years of group homes and city noise. But underneath the quiet, I could hear things. Wind through the pond, insects chirping, the distant sound of a train whistle. It felt like the land was trying to tell me something. I found Robert's journals in his bedroom desk. Page after page of farming notes, weather observations, and financial worries. But scattered throughout were entries about me. "Saw Nathan's caseworker today. He's doing well in school. Wish I had the courage to bring him home. The farm's barely keeping me afloat. How can I take care of a kid when I can't take care of myself?" Reading those entries broke something open in my chest. He'd been watching over me from a distance, caring in the only way he knew how. The anger I'd carried for years started shifting into something else. Understanding, maybe. Or forgiveness. The next morning I walked the property boundaries. 200 acres of corn and soybeans, mostly harvested, but with equipment still sitting in the fields. The grain silos stood like sentinels near the barn, tall concrete cylinders that could hold thousands of bushels. I'd never seen anything like them up close. Stephen Wood, the neighbor to the east, found me examining the combine harvester. He was probably 60, with sun-weathered skin and suspicious eyes. "You Robert's nephew, the one from Chicago." "That's me." I tried to sound more confident than I felt. Stephen walked around the machine, pointing out problems. "This combine's got maybe one more season in it, if you're lucky. That silo's got a crack in the foundation. And you're looking at about $15,000 in seed and fertilizer costs come spring." I must have looked overwhelmed because his expression softened slightly. Robert was a good man, stubborn as hell, but good. "He talked about you sometimes, said you were smart. What am I supposed to do with all this?" I gestured at the endless fields. Stephen studied me for a long moment. "You ever worked with your hands, boy?" "Not really. Foster homes don't teach farming skills." "Well, you got two choices: sell it all to pay the debts and walk away with nothing, or learn fast and fight for it." Robert fought for this place his whole life. Question is, are you willing to do the same? That night, I called Aaron Edwards. "I want to try to save the farm. What do I need to do?" There was a pause. "Nathan, I have to be honest. The odds aren't good. You'd need to generate significant income quickly, and farming is a long-term investment. Most crops won't pay out until next fall. What about the grain that's already harvested?" There were full silos when I walked around today. Aaron's voice perked up. "You're right. Robert harvested most of his crop before he died. If the grain is good quality, that could buy you some time. You'll need to get it tested and find buyers, but it might be enough to make a payment or two." I spent the next week learning everything I could about grain storage and sales. The local elevator company, run by a woman named Ruth Wright, agreed to test samples from both silos. The corn tested well, but when we opened the second silo, something was wrong. Ruth frowned at her moisture meter readings when, "This grain's been treated with something. The protein levels are off the charts, and there's some kind of coating on the kernels I've never seen before." "Is it bad?" My heart sank. Ruth shook her head slowly. "It's not bad, it's incredible. These protein and nutrient levels are impossible with standard corn. If this is what I think it is, you're looking at premium organic seed corn worth 10 times the regular market price." Ruth sent samples to the Agricultural Extension Office at the State University. 3 days later, a professor named Megan Baker drove down to examine the grain personally. She was maybe 40, with dirt under her fingernails and excitement in her voice. "This is remarkable, Nathan. Your uncle was apparently experimenting with heritage seed varieties and organic enhancement techniques. This corn has nutritional profiles we haven't seen in commercial agriculture for decades." She explained that Robert had been working with heirloom corn varieties, using traditional farming methods combined with modern organic practices. The result was grain with exceptional nutritional density and natural resistance to pests and disease. "The market for this kind of seed corn is exploding," Megan continued. "Organic farmers and heritage seed companies pay premium prices for verified heirloom varieties. You could be looking at $50 to $70 per bushel instead of the usual 4 or 5. I did quick math in my head. Each silo held roughly 3,000 bushels. Even at the conservative estimate, that was enough money to pay off the farm's debts and have operating capital left over." "But there's a catch," Megan warned. "You'll need to prove the seed's provenance and maintain organic certification standards. That means detailed records, soil testing, and verification of Robert's growing methods." That's when I remembered the journals. Robert had documented everything, including his experiments with heritage seeds and organic treatments. His meticulous record-keeping, which I'd initially found boring, suddenly became invaluable. Aaron Edwards couldn't believe the numbers when I called him. "You're telling me your uncle left you a gold mine disguised as a grain silo?" "It looks that way, but I need help navigating the certification process and finding buyers." "I know someone who can help. Jeffrey Hill runs a specialty seed company about an hour north. He's been looking for exactly this kind of product." Jeffrey Hill turned out to be a soft-spoken man in his 50s who'd spent his career promoting sustainable agriculture. He drove down the next day with Lisa Reed, his quality control specialist, to examine the grain personally. "Your uncle was ahead of his time," Jeffrey told me after spending 2 hours in the silos. "These varieties were nearly extinct 20 years ago. He somehow preserved and improved them using techniques most farmers have forgotten." Lisa emerged from the second silo with samples in labeled bags. The genetic diversity here is incredible. Some of these varieties date back to the 1800s. Collectors and organic farmers will pay top dollar for verified seed stock. Jeffrey made an offer on the spot, $65 per bushel for the entire contents of both silos, with a contract for future harvests if I could maintain the same quality standards. The total came to nearly $400,000. I sat on Robert's porch that night, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. 6 months ago, I was aging out of foster care with nothing. Now I owned a farm worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and had the beginnings of a sustainable business. But the money wasn't the real treasure. It was the realization that Robert had been preparing this gift for years, quietly working to create something valuable he could leave behind. Every journal entry, every careful seed selection, every organic treatment had been building toward this moment. The next morning, I called Carol Ramos to tell her what had happened. She cried when I described finding the grain and learning about Robert's experiments. He never stopped caring about you, Nathan. He just didn't know how to show it while he was struggling himself. I'm going to make this work, Carol. I'm going to learn to farm and keep this place running. I know you will. You've always been a fighter. Stephen Wood became my unofficial mentor once word spread about the heritage seed discovery. He'd stop by most mornings with coffee and farming advice, teaching me about soil management, equipment maintenance, and crop rotation. Your uncle was smarter than any of us gave him credit for, Stephen admitted one morning as we walked the fields. We all thought he was wasting time with those old seed varieties. Turns out he was building something none of us understood. The community's attitude toward me shifted as well. Initially, I had been the outsider, the city kid who didn't belong. But as neighbors learned about my plans to continue Robert's work, they began offering help and advice. The local feed store owner, Brenda Reyes, set up accounts for me and explained the seasonal rhythms of agricultural supply. Winter gave me time to plan and learn. I enrolled in online courses about sustainable agriculture and spent hours studying Robert's journals. His notes revealed a systematic approach to soil health, seed selection, and organic pest management that had taken him decades to develop. The farmhouse became my classroom and laboratory. I converted Robert's office into a seed testing area and began learning to identify different varieties by sight and feel. Each type of corn had distinct characteristics, color variations, and growth patterns that affected its market value. Aaron Edwards helped me establish the legal framework for the seed business. We created contracts with Jeffrey Hill's company and set up certification processes with organic agriculture boards. The paperwork was overwhelming, but each form signed felt like another step toward legitimacy. By spring, I was ready to plant my first crop. Stephen Wood and several neighbors showed up to help, bringing equipment and expertise I couldn't have managed alone. Watching the corn emerge from soil I'd prepared myself felt like witnessing a miracle. The growing season brought new challenges: weather monitoring, pest management, and irrigation decisions that could make or break the harvest. But Robert's journals provided guidance for every situation, like having a mentor whispering advice in my ear. Megan Baker visited regularly to monitor the crop's development and help maintain organic certification standards. She brought graduate students who documented my farming methods and collected data for research projects. "You're becoming part of agricultural history, Nathan," she told me during one visit. "This kind of heritage seed preservation is crucial for food security and biodiversity." The harvest that fall exceeded everyone's expectations. The heritage corn varieties produced exceptional yields with protein levels even higher than the previous year's crop. Jeffrey Hill's company purchased the entire harvest at premium prices, and I had inquiries from organic farmers across 3 states wanting to buy seed for their own operations. More importantly, I'd found my place in the community. The skeptical looks had been replaced by respect and acceptance. I was no longer the orphan from Chicago, but Nathan Martinez, the young farmer carrying on Robert Turner's legacy. Ruth Wright offered me a position on the local agricultural cooperative board. Stephen Wood invited me to join the Regional Sustainable Farming Association. Brenda Reyes asked me to speak at the high school about career opportunities in agriculture. But the real validation came from an unexpected source. I was cleaning out Robert's bedroom when I found a letter addressed to me, dated just weeks before his death. "Nathan, if you're reading this, Then my plan worked, and you've discovered what I've been building for you. I know I failed you as an uncle. I should have brought you home when your parents died, should have fought harder to keep you out of the system. My pride and fear kept me from doing what was right. This farm was my way of trying to make amends. Every seed I saved, every organic technique I learned, every dollar I invested in soil health was for you. I wanted to leave you something valuable, something that could give you the security and purpose I never had. You don't have to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I hope you'll see this place as more than just land and buildings. It's a foundation for building the life you deserve, surrounded by people who will value what you bring to their community. The corn varieties in those silos represent decades of work, but they're just the beginning. There are more seeds in the root cellar, experimental plots behind the barn, and research notes that could keep you busy for years. If you choose to stay and continue this work, you'll be preserving something important for future generations. Welcome home, son. I'm sorry it took me so long to bring you here. I sat on the porch reading that letter 3 times, crying harder than I had since my parents died. All those years feeling abandoned and forgotten, Robert had been working toward this moment. The farm wasn't just an inheritance, it was an apology, a love letter, and a future all wrapped together. The second year brought new opportunities and challenges. Word about my heritage seed operation spread through agricultural networks, bringing visitors from universities, seed companies, and organic farming organizations. The quiet farm became a destination for researchers studying sustainable agriculture and biodiversity preservation. I hired my first employee, a recent agricultural college graduate named Marcus Thompson, who'd grown up on a farm 2 counties over. Having help with the daily operations freed me to focus on seed development and business expansion. The root cellar Robert mentioned in his letter turned out to be a treasure trove. Dozens of seed varieties carefully stored and labeled, some dating back generations. Each container held potential for new products and markets. Jeffrey Hill proposed a partnership to develop a heritage seed catalog featuring varieties I was preserving and improving. The catalog would serve farmers across the region looking for alternatives to commercial hybrid seeds. But success brought its own complications. A large agricultural corporation approached me about licensing my seed varieties for mass production. The offer was substantial, enough to set me up for life, but it would mean losing control over how the seeds were used and distributed. I called a meeting with my informal advisory board, Stephen Wood, Ruth Wright, Aaron Edwards, and Megan Baker. We gathered in the farmhouse kitchen where Robert had made countless decisions about the land. The money's tempting, I admitted, but Robert spent decades developing these varieties using sustainable methods. Turning them over to industrial agriculture feels like betraying everything he worked for. Stephen nodded approvingly. Your uncle wouldn't have sold out. He believed in doing things the right way, even when it cost him. Megan leaned forward. You have something more valuable than money, Nathan. You have genetic diversity that's been lost in commercial agriculture. These seeds could help farmers adapt to climate change and reduce dependence on chemical inputs. Ruth added her perspective. The local farming community has invested in your success too. We've shared knowledge, equipment, and labor because we believe in what you're doing. Don't forget that when you make your decision. Aaron, ever the lawyer, presented the practical considerations. You're building something sustainable here. The corporation's offer is one-time money. Your current path builds long-term wealth and maintains your independence. I turned down the corporate offer and doubled down on the heritage seed business. The decision felt right, like something Robert would have approved of. That fall, I hosted the first annual Heritage Seed Festival on the farm. Farmers, gardeners, and researchers came from across the Midwest to share knowledge, trade seeds, and celebrate agricultural diversity. The event drew over 300 people and established the farm as a regional center for sustainable agriculture education. Standing in front of that crowd, explaining Robert's work and my plans for the future, I felt something I'd never experienced before. I belonged somewhere. I had a purpose that connected me to the land, the community, and something larger than myself. The festival became an annual tradition, growing larger each year. I added workshops on organic farming techniques, heritage seed preservation, and sustainable agriculture business practices. The farm evolved from a production facility into an educational center. 3 years after inheriting the farm, I was featured on the cover of Sustainable Agriculture magazine. The article described my transition from foster care to successful farmer, highlighting the heritage seed preservation work and community impact. But the real measure of success wasn't media attention or financial returns. It was the letter I received from a teenage girl in foster care who'd read the article online. Dear Nathan, my name is Sarah and I'm 17 years old. I've been in foster care since I was 10 and I'll age out next year. Reading about your story gave me hope that maybe there's something good waiting for me too, even if I can't see it yet. Thank you for showing that people like us can build something meaningful. I wrote back immediately, inviting Sarah to visit the farm and learn about agricultural opportunities. She came that summer as an intern, working alongside Marcus and learning farming skills while finishing her high school degree online. Sarah's presence reminded me of my own journey and inspired me to formalize a program for young people aging out of foster care. Working with Carol Ramos and the State Social Services Department, I established internships that combined agricultural training with life skills development. The program attracted attention from other farmers and organizations interested in replicating the model. Within 2 years, we had partnerships with farms across 3 states, providing opportunities for dozens of young people who might otherwise have struggled to find their place in the world. Robert's legacy was expanding beyond heritage seeds into something even more valuable, a network of support and opportunity for kids who needed a second chance. The farm itself continued evolving. I added greenhouse facilities for seed starting and year-round production. The barn was converted into a processing and packaging center for the seed business. Solar panels on the roof made the operation energy independent. Most importantly, I built relationships that felt like family. Stephen Wood became the grandfather I'd never had, teaching me not just farming techniques, but life wisdom earned through decades of working the land. Ruth Wright treated me like a son, celebrating my successes and offering comfort during difficult times. Aaron Edwards remained my legal advisor, but also became a close friend. He helped me establish the nonprofit foundation that funded the foster care internship program and provided legal services for young people transitioning out of the system. Megan Baker collaborated on research projects that used the farm as a living laboratory for sustainable agriculture studies. Her work helped document the environmental and economic benefits of heritage seed preservation. Even Carol Ramos visited regularly, bringing other social workers to see the internship program in action. She often said that watching my transformation gave her hope for all the kids she worked with. The community that had initially viewed me with suspicion now claimed me as one of their own. I served on the school board, volunteered with the volunteer fire department, and helped organize community events. The farm hosted everything from 4-H meetings to wedding receptions. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. The State Agricultural Department honored me with their Young Farmer of the Year award, presented at the state fair in front of thousands of people. Standing on that stage, holding the award, I thought about the scared 19-year-old who'd stepped off a bus in Millfield 4 years earlier. That kid couldn't have imagined this moment or the journey that led to it. The 5th year brought a milestone I'd been working toward since discovering Robert's letter. I finally paid off the last of the farm's original debts, making the land truly mine, free and clear. Aaron Edwards presented me with the deed at a small ceremony attended by everyone who'd helped along the way. This farm has been in agricultural production for over a century, Aaron announced, but I think it's safe to say it's never been in better hands than it is today. The celebration continued at the farmhouse, where neighbors and friends gathered to mark the occasion. Stephen Wood raised a toast to Robert's memory and my future. Ruth Wright presented me with a photo album documenting the farm's transformation over the past 5 years. But the moment that meant the most came when Sarah, now a college junior studying agricultural business, stood up to speak. When I first came here, I was angry and scared and convinced that nobody cared what happened to me. Nathan showed me that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about people who invest in your future and believe in your potential. This farm saved both of us in different ways. That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked through the grain silos where this journey had begun. The concrete cylinders were full again. this time with seeds I'd grown and harvested myself. Each variety represented not just agricultural genetics, but stories of farmers who'd preserved these plants through generations. I thought about Robert and the gift he'd given me. Not just the land and buildings, but the opportunity to discover who I could become when given a chance to belong somewhere. The scared kid from foster care had grown into someone who could create opportunities for others facing similar challenges. The Heritage Seed business now supplied farmers across 10 states and had international inquiries from organizations working to preserve agricultural biodiversity. The educational programs brought hundreds of visitors annually, spreading knowledge about sustainable farming practices. More importantly, the foster care internship program had helped 37 young people transition successfully into independent adult lives. Some went to college, others started careers in agriculture or related fields, but all of them found their footing in ways that might not have happened without the support and opportunities the farm provided. I kept in touch with most of the former interns, celebrating their achievements and offering guidance when they faced challenges. Watching them succeed felt like the most important work I'd ever done. The farm had become more than a business or even a home. It was a demonstration of what's possible when someone believes in you enough to invest in your potential. Robert had seen something in me that I couldn't see in myself, and his faith had created ripple effects that continued expanding. As I stood in the silo where I'd first found his hidden letter, I understood that the real treasure hadn't been the money or even the successful business. It was the realization that I had value beyond what the foster care system had taught me to believe about myself. The scared 19-year-old who'd inherited a bankrupt farm had discovered not just financial security, but something more precious, a sense of purpose and belonging that no amount of money could buy. Today, 7 years after that first bus ride to Millfield, I'm writing this from the same farmhouse porch where I once sat feeling overwhelmed and alone. The view hasn't changed much, the same fields stretching to the horizon, the same grain silos standing sentinel near the barn, but everything else has been transformed. The farm now employs 6 full-time workers and provides seasonal employment for dozens more. The Heritage Seed catalog features over 40 varieties, many of them rescued from near extinction and restored to commercial viability. We ship seeds to customers in all 50 states and 12 countries. The educational programs have expanded to include partnerships with universities, agricultural extension services, and international development organizations. Researchers come here to study everything from soil health to climate adaptation strategies. But I'm most proud of the young people who found their start here. 43 former foster kids have completed internships at the farm, and their success stories continue inspiring others. Sarah graduated college last year and now manages our educational programs. Marcus bought his own farm with profits from heritage seed production we helped him start. The community that once viewed me as an outsider now considers me a hometown success story. Local newspapers regularly feature articles about the farm's impact on regional agriculture and youth development. The governor visited last year to announce a statewide expansion of programs based on our model. Stephen Wood, now in his 70s, still stops by most mornings with coffee and farming advice. He's become the grandfather I never had, and I've become the heir to his decades of agricultural wisdom. Ruth Wright jokes that I've become the son she never had and treats my successes as her own. Aaron Edwards handles legal work for the farm and the nonprofit foundation, but more importantly, he's become family in every way that matters. Carol Ramos retired from social work last year, but continues volunteering with our foster care programs, saying that seeing my transformation reminds her why she chose her career. The relationships I've built here feel more solid and meaningful than anything I experienced in 19 years of foster care. They're based on mutual respect, shared work, and genuine care rather than obligation or temporary placement. I still have Robert's letter, now framed and hanging in the farmhouse office. I read it sometimes when I'm making difficult decisions, remembering that everything I've built started with his faith in my potential. The scared, angry kid he remembered had grown into someone capable of creating opportunities for others facing similar challenges. The grain silo where I first discovered his hidden gift has become a symbol of transformation. School groups tour the facility regularly, learning about agricultural history and the importance of preserving genetic diversity. But I always tell them the real lesson isn't about farming techniques or business success. It's about the power of believing in someone's potential, even when they can't see it themselves. Robert invested years of work in creating something valuable he could leave behind, not because he expected anything in return, but because he wanted to give me a chance at the life he thought I deserved. That gift transformed not just my circumstances, but my understanding of what family means. I learned that belonging isn't about blood relations or legal documents. It's about people who invest in your future, support your dreams, and celebrate your successes as their own. The farm continues evolving and expanding its impact. This year, we're launching a seed library program that will distribute heritage varieties to community gardens and small farmers at cost. The goal is to increase agricultural biodiversity while making sustainable farming more accessible to people with limited resources. We're also developing online courses that will share Robert's farming techniques with a global audience. The curriculum covers everything from soil health management to seed preservation, making decades of accumulated knowledge available to anyone interested in sustainable agriculture. The foster care internship program has inspired similar initiatives at farms across the country. We provide consulting services to help other agricultural operations develop their own programs, creating a network of opportunities for young people aging out of the system. But perhaps the most meaningful development is personal. Last month, I married Lisa Reed, the quality control specialist from Jeffrey Hill's company who'd helped evaluate my first harvest 7 years ago. We met professionally, but our relationship grew through shared passion for sustainable agriculture and commitment to the farm's mission. Lisa brings her own expertise to the operation, particularly in developing quality standards and certification processes that ensure our seeds meet the highest standards. More importantly, she shares the vision of using agriculture as a force for positive social change. Our wedding took place right here on the farm, in the same fields where I'd first learned to plant and harvest. Stephen Wood walked me down the aisle, Ruth Wright provided the flowers from her garden, and Aaron Edwards performed the ceremony as a licensed officiant. The celebration included current and former interns, neighbors who'd become family, and colleagues from across the agricultural community. Sarah gave a speech about how the farm had taught her that home isn't a place you're born into, but a place you choose to build. Standing there surrounded by people who'd invested in my success and shared my journey, I felt the full weight of how far I'd traveled from that scared kid stepping off a bus with $300 and no idea what the future held. Lisa and I are planning to expand the farmhouse to accommodate the family we hope to have. The idea of raising children here, giving them the stability and belonging I'd never experienced, feels like completing a circle Robert started when he first began saving seeds for my future. We're also discussing ways to ensure the farm's mission continues beyond our lifetimes. The nonprofit foundation provides some continuity, but we want to create structures that will preserve both the agricultural work and the social programs for generations to come. The heritage seeds themselves represent a form of legacy, genetic diversity preserved and passed forward to future farmers. But the real inheritance we're building is the demonstration that everyone deserves a chance to discover their potential, regardless of their starting circumstances. I think Robert would be proud of what his gift has become. The bankrupt farm he left behind has grown into a thriving business, educational center, and community resource. More importantly, it's become a place where young people can discover that their past doesn't have to determine their future. The scared, angry kid who once felt abandoned by everyone who was supposed to care has become someone capable of providing stability and opportunity for others facing similar challenges. That transformation started with one person's faith in my potential, but it continues through the relationships and community we have built together. Looking back on this journey, I'm struck by how many small decisions and chance encounters shaped the outcome. If Robert hadn't preserved those heritage seeds, if Aaron Edwards hadn't been patient with my questions, if Stephen Wood hadn't offered guidance, if the community hadn't eventually accepted me, the story could have ended very differently. But I also recognize that success required more than luck and other people's kindness. It demanded willingness to learn, persistence through difficult times, and commitment to something larger than personal gain. The farm taught me that meaningful work requires both individual effort and community support. The foster care system had taught me to expect temporary relationships and constant change. The farm showed me what stability and belonging could feel like. Having a place that was truly mine work that mattered, and people who invested in my success created a foundation I'd never experienced before. That foundation made it possible to take risks, whether learning new farming techniques, starting educational programs, or expanding the business into new markets. Knowing I had a home base and support system gave me confidence to try things that might have seemed impossible when I was constantly moving between placements. The heritage seeds became a metaphor for my own transformation. Just as those varieties carried genetic potential that could only be realized under the right conditions, I carried possibilities that needed the right environment to flourish. Robert's gift provided that environment, but fulfilling the potential required years of patient work and gradual growth. Now I see similar potential in every young person who comes through our internship program. Some arrive angry and defensive, convinced that adults can't be trusted and that failure is inevitable. Others seem confident but lack practical skills or direction. All of them need what I needed, someone willing to invest time and resources in their future without guarantee of return. The transformation isn't always dramatic or immediate. Sometimes it's as simple as learning that they're capable of hard work, or discovering that they have valuable skills, or realizing that adults can keep their promises. Small victories build toward larger changes, just like healthy soil gradually produces better crops. I've learned that giving young people meaningful work and genuine responsibility often accomplishes more than traditional social services. When someone trusts you with important tasks and provides the training to succeed, it changes how you see yourself and your potential. The farm has become a laboratory for testing that theory. We've seen kids who'd been labeled as problems or failures discover talents they didn't know they had. Former interns now run their own businesses, work in agricultural careers, or pursue college degrees they never thought possible. Their success stories validate Robert's original insight. Sometimes people need more than good intentions or temporary help. They need someone willing to make a long-term investment in their potential, providing not just immediate assistance, but the foundation for building a meaningful life. The grain silo where this story began now holds seeds grown by young people who arrived here feeling as lost and abandoned as I once did. Those seeds will grow into plants that feed families and preserve genetic diversity for future generations. But they also represent something more abstract and equally valuable, proof that everyone has potential worth nurturing. As I finish writing this story, I'm sitting in the same office where I first read Robert's journals and tried to understand what he'd been building for me. The walls are now covered with photos documenting the farm's growth and the young people who found their start here. There's Sarah accepting her college diploma, Marcus cutting the ribbon at his own farm's grand opening, and dozens of other success stories that started with someone believing in potential that wasn't immediately obvious. Each photo represents a life that took a different trajectory because of opportunities created here. The latest addition is a picture from last month's Heritage Seed Festival, now in its 7th year and drawing over 1,000 visitors annually. The image shows me standing next to the grain silo with Lisa, surrounded by current interns and community members who've become family. Looking at that photo, I'm struck by how different my life might have been if Robert had chosen differently. If he'd sold the farm before he died, if he'd been too proud to reach out, if he'd convinced himself that I was better off without him, none of this would have happened. Instead, he chose to believe that the scared kid he remembered visiting once could grow into someone worthy of his life's work. That faith created ripple effects that continue expanding, touching lives in ways he never could have imagined. The farm now serves as a model for agricultural programs across the country and internationally. Delegations visit regularly to study our methods and adapt them for their own communities. The techniques we've developed for heritage seed preservation are being used to restore agricultural biodiversity in regions where it had been lost. But the real measure of success isn't in awards or recognition or even financial returns. It's in the knowledge that this place continues providing opportunities for young people who need what I needed, a chance to discover their potential in an environment that supports their growth. Every morning when I walk through the fields Robert once worked, I'm reminded that I'm not just farming land, but stewarding a legacy. The seeds we preserve carry genetic information accumulated over centuries, but they also carry the promise of future harvests and continued opportunity. The young people who come through our programs carry similar potential. They arrive with experiences and capabilities shaped by difficult circumstances, but also with resilience and determination that can produce remarkable results under the right conditions. My story started with loss and abandonment, circumstances that could have led to very different outcomes. But it transformed into something I never could have imagined when I stepped off that bus 7 years ago. A life filled with purpose, community, and the satisfaction of meaningful work. If you're watching this and you've ever felt forgotten or abandoned, if you've ever wondered whether anyone cares what happens to you, I want you to know that your story isn't finished yet. Sometimes the best chapters come after the worst ones, when someone believes in your potential enough to invest in your future. Maybe you don't have an uncle who left you a farm, but you might have teachers, neighbors, mentors, or community members who see something in you that you can't see in yourself yet. The key is being open to those opportunities when they appear and willing to do the work required to transform potential into reality. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what dreams you're working toward. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their story isn't over yet. And if you want to see more stories about people who found their way from difficult beginnings to meaningful lives, make sure to subscribe. The grain silo where I first discovered Robert's letter still stands in the same spot, but now it's surrounded by evidence of growth and transformation. Heritage seeds, successful programs, and young lives that found new direction, all because one person chose to believe in potential that wasn't immediately obvious. That's the real treasure Robert left behind, not just the seeds or the land or even the successful business, but the demonstration that everyone deserves a chance to discover who they can become when someone invests in their future. The scared kid from foster care grew into someone capable of providing that same opportunity for others, and the cycle continues with each new person who finds their start here. This is Nathan Martinez, and this is how my uncle's hidden gift changed everything.